Okay, so get this, right? The Neurotypical Underground. Sounds like some kind of like shadowy group from a sci-fi flick.
Yeah, exactly. Like super clandestine.
But no, this is actually about this fictional podcast, right?
Yeah.
That you sent me. And it basically flips everything we think we know about, neurodiversity, like on its head.
Totally. It's like it takes what we consider normal now and just like throws it out the window, which is kind of wild to think about.
Big time. So like in the first episode of this fictional podcast, the Pattern Recognition Revolution, I think it was called, it takes place in 2045. And there's this huge scientific breakthrough. And it like supercharges everyone's pattern recognition abilities.
Right.
And, obviously things that are like often associated with ADHD and autism spectrum, like suddenly those become the most valuable skills. So, I mean, are we already seeing this kind of shift happening today, like with AI and all this complex problem solving that everyone's got to do?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, think about it. Neurodiversity, right? Just the natural variations in how our brains work. I mean, that becomes the most important thing. In a world where it's all AI and big data, like people who can see patterns, people who can like make connections that other people miss, they're the ones who are going to like succeed.
Yeah. So then, like, what happens to everyone else? Like in episode 2, The Silent Minority, it's like not a pretty picture. Neurotypicals, their birth rate is declining. They're forming like these hidden communities. They're being pushed to the edges of society.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine waking up one day and like suddenly you're the one who doesn't fit in?
It's a weird thought, right? Like this episode, it really makes you think about how fast things can change in society,
Right.
and what can happen to people who don't like fit the new mold. And it doesn't pull any punches. Like it shows how anxious and lost people would feel.
Yeah. And then things get like even trickier, ethically speaking, right? In episodes 3 and 4, enhancement programs and pattern societies, and like they introduced this idea of like mandatory neurodivergent breeding programs.
Yeah.
Which is, whoa.
Heavy stuff.
And then there are these like resistance movements popping up, right? Fighting for like people to have a choice. And like, what do you make of that? Especially considering all the real world debates about genetic engineering and, reproductive rights.
It's like, okay, in Neurotypical Underground, they take those debates and turn them up to 11. But like, there is a good point. Like, who gets to decide what the best way for a human brain to work is? And like, is it even ethical to try to, engineer society to have certain traits? There's episodes that are like a warning, like, hey, be careful with the science stuff. You got to think about how it affects people.
It's true. And then, of course, you can't talk about this without talking about technology.
Right.
Episodes 5 and 6, digital evolution and preservation networks, they get into how tech can either like bridge the gap or make it even wider between neurotypical and neurodivergent folks.
Right.
Like you've got AI algorithms that are biased towards certain ways of thinking and interfaces that like literally exclude certain users and like secret encrypted networks for these underground communities. It's like the digital version of the whole societal divide, right?
Exactly. It's like what they're showing in the podcast is that if we're not careful, tech can actually make inequality worse.
Yeah.
Like we have to think about accessibility and how different minds work when we're building new tech. Otherwise, we end up like shutting people out without even realizing it. And that's a real problem, not just in this fictional future, but right now.
For real.
Yeah.
So like, is there any hope for a future where everyone can, thrive, no matter how their brain works?
Well, the last 2 episodes, Finding Middle Ground and The Future of Human Cognition, they're kind of more optimistic. Like, their argument is that we need cognitive diversity. It's like, just like biodiversity is important for a healthy ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
Having all these different ways of thinking is what makes society stronger. And they talk about, ways to, like, build understanding and get people working together, like focusing on everyone's strengths.
I love that. And like, that's so true for us right now,
Yeah.
Imagine we could all just like appreciate how everyone thinks differently. Like think of the amazing things we could do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the Neurotypical Underground, it's like a thought experiment. It makes us look at our own biases and like really think about how we can build a future where every single mind is celebrated,
I'm in.
Yeah.
Count me in for that future. Thanks so much for going on this deep dive with me. It's really given me a lot to think about.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always good to, think outside the box.
For sure.
Like, what if everything we thought was normal wasn't?
Exactly. And it makes you realize, like, there's no one right way to think.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see everyone next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.